Hinchcliffe. Now we start with a lady first, Trudi Schifter from TallyFox. She's English speaking. We have Dion Hinchcliffe, English speaking. We also have Neal joining us into this in a moment. But then we also have German experts on this panel. Jörg Allmann, then Siegfried Lautenbacher and Martin Heers. But I'd like to give you the microphone first to introduce yourself. Maybe we start with, no, we start with the lady, certainly.
Oh, so you want me to introduce myself? Okay. Trudi Schifter, I'm the CEO and founder of TallyFox Social Technologies. I've been working in industry for 30 years and was for 13 years a venture capitalist before starting TallyFox 7 years ago. And I'm from Zurich. So we can auch Deutsch sprechen.
Now we're gonna discuss in English. So Neal, we need another seat for Neal, please. Martin.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Martin Heers. I come from a company called HIRSCHTEC, and we are based in Hamburg. And we build intranets, especially social intranets. I myself, I was in the pure enterprise social networking business for 3 or 4 years, and now we look to the social intranets from the intranet perspective. So, and we do it since 10 years, only intranets.
Siegfried Lautenbacher, co-founder of Beck Services in Munich, Romania and Brazil. We are helping our customers to implement social technologies and give them ideas how to use them to create business value.
My name is Jörg Allmann. I'm General Manager of HolisticNet. It's a kind of home run for me here. We are located in Hanover. And yes, we are IBM business partner, Microsoft business partner, so dealing with all the stuff which they brought to the social networking area. And so we have to fight together with our customers in this area.
Speaking. No.
Yeah. So my name is Dion Hinchcliffe. I've been working for a long time in enterprise social in all of its many forms. I'm Chief Strategy Officer with 7 Summits. We develop communities for the world's largest organizations, and looking forward to this conversation.
Hello, and I'm the latecomer. I am Neal from Atlassian. I'm a solutions engineer based out of Amsterdam, working with our largest enterprise customers, trying to do collaboration tool engagement, solution selling on top of software teams, and all things that are related.
Great. So we have a nice variety of opinions and views on the market. So we have solution providers, consultants, and also an analyst. And I asked Dion to give us his thoughts about the structure of the social collaboration technology stack. So what is his ideas are, where are the difference and where we have to differentiate between the solutions. And he will give us a small introduction talk, and then we're going to discuss. Maybe we go over there?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Okay. Now, is this working? Is this not working?
It's working.
Okay. So if you go to the next slide, can you guys hear me?
No.
No. Yeah, it's not working. Huh. Okay. So I prepared a few slides to compare and contrast how enterprise collaboration technology is working. Next slide, please. Or do I have it here? So we've had in the enterprise a variety of communication tools for the last 30 years, and they've continued to evolve. Of course, we started with email, and that was early on when we didn't really understand how to foster good communication and collaboration in scale, right? We moved on to things like instant messaging and chat so we could have faster, more real-time conversations. We developed social tools, the early forms, things like wikis and blogs were new corporate communication tools that allowed us a lot more scale, a lot more participation, a lot more collaboration. And then eventually enterprise social networks and communities, which are different in that enterprise social networks are deliberately opt-in. I want to connect with certain people, but not everyone, whereas with communities you can see everything. And we can see some very distinct characteristics have developed over the years. In the early days, the tools were very interruptive. They stopped what you're doing, they popped up on the screen, you got a notification, and while you can still get those with these other tools, they don't give you a message for everything that happens inside your network. They're much more asynchronous, much more scalable. We also see that these newer tools are designed for much larger groups of people than before, right? You really can't do chat with more than 100 people at a time. It just you can't keep track of it. Whereas these new methods allow us a much higher degree of scale, and we can do what's called mass collaboration, right? Work on really big problems or develop and cultivate a lot of innovation to solve a very difficult problem. The early tools kept everything hidden. It was only the people that you identified ahead of time. These newer tools realized that wasn't really a good idea, that making it open and shared and visible to all allowed a lot more collaboration, a lot more innovation, more discoverability, more reuse. And that we used to only allow people that were invited, but we realized that wasn't good either, that in general collaboration is better when anyone can participate. But these old methods are well understood. The new ones require, a little bit of new digital skills, things like working out loud, better personal knowledge management, like why should you tag things so that you can find it and other people can find it later, right? So that's a little different. That there's been some impedance over here. I want to discuss this with the panel because you require a little bit of new skills to be driven into the organization to get access to some of these powerful features. And then there's this new skill called community management. Communities are a new type of structure in the organization, and we discovered they work better when they're managed. And so these old tools don't require them at all. The older social ones, maybe, but definitely the new ones require active community management, professional community managers even. So that's kind of a different thing that I think most people don't fully understand. To get the full value of this, you have to provide the skills and the support to do that. So continuing further, this is one of my famous scary diagrams about all the things that you need to do, or you could do with collaboration with, here's the data down here, the different types of tools here, all the integrations and context. We discovered collaboration isn't good, but it's way over off to the side. It has to be in the middle of your work processes, in the middle of your tools, in the middle of your data. It should have context around projects, resources, and so on. And we need to be able to then drive those digital skills, and we need to have clear goals on what we're trying to do. And the challenge has been this, that these little dots here each represent all the collaboration tools we're getting in our organizations. When I talk to people now, they say collaboration tools are coming in everywhere. They're embedded in my CRM system. They're in my ERP tool. We're using Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. We're using open social to talk to our customers. We even do work. We have online communities. We've got enterprise social networks. We have wikis and blogs. We have all this stuff in from many vendors. And so the challenge is we can end up with this big unmanaged mess, or somehow we can create an optimal structure. We have to start sorting through what tools for when, or connect them better. On the leading edge is something called Slack, a very popular new collaboration tool that solves this automatically. All right, so that's been very popular. It's the fastest growing collaboration tool in the United States anyway. So love to talk about that. And to wrap up, it's still early days yet. If you look at the different types of collaboration tools, there's still a lot of space. We're just in the cave painting days of digital collaboration. More discoveries will be made, so we shouldn't be locking in plans forever. We should be experimenting with new ways of working, with new tools, find out what gives us benefits, and keep moving forward. So moving forward, I think, is the big message here. And that's it. So hopefully that was enough to give us something to talk about.
Great. Thank you. Give him a warm hand, please. Thanks, Dion, for the nice introduction. This gives us a little insight on, or a structure to talk about, at least. But what are your opinions? Neal, how do you see the market?
So many opinions. I actually love your graph, starting from community going back to, let's say, 1982. I really enjoy the way that you can slice this. I would say when you're starting to compare collaboration tools across the ecosystem, you are starting to see a lot of companies try to do all of those tiers one by one. They're trying to trick their tool into being, and for instance, let's talk about Confluence from Atlassian side. you can start it as a community tool and slowly put restrictions on it slightly by slightly, where it turns into a blog or it turns into glorified email if you choose. I think on Atlassian side, we try to convince people that the community-driven way is the best way, because it's the one where we see the most success. But I'm interested to hear what everyone else has to think about. From the tool side also, how often do you try to find people bridging the gaps between multiple tool sets and multiple processes?
We need to share on this side the microphone, and you're sharing on that side. So Jörg Allmann next. So what are your thoughts about the market?
Okay, I think the situation is a little bit similar to the acoustic situation here in the environment. I guess normally I'm voting for a free market economy, but this competition in the market raises problems because the consumer sees a lot of different tools and there is no unique user interface, there's no unique handling, and for instance all of us, we are active in very different social media areas, acting differently, having different target groups and so on, having different partners, contacts and so on. And a few months ago an old professor which introduced Lotus Notes in the European market asked me, please call me if all this stuff is consolidated and if I have to enter only one social area and then I'm in. And I told him this will never happen, sorry for that.
So we are still in the move, but well, you introduced yourself also that you're more on a general approach on different platforms. So what are you advising your customers where to start with from the technology scope?
Yes, it's not easy to advise things, but they have to decide to reduce to single use cases, to single systems, and not trying to combine all the stuff in their internal environment. And I think also there's a big difference between internal social media environments, which may be some kind of ideal. There's no access limitation, everything is there. There's this single point of truth where IBM is talking about, but this single point of truth is never available if you are dealing with a lot of people outside. So you have to focus on your use cases and use the right tools for these use cases and then extend it step by step. This is my advice.
Well, I think that with the emergence of cloud and cloud collaboration and cloud-based services, the situation got wonderful and kind of a paradise for autonomous teams and small organizations. So you find a lot of tools available that really fit well in small groups or small situations, like beginning with Dropbox, going to Box, going to Trouble or Slack. So that kind of tools are wonderful. Basecamp was one of the first companies providing software to collaborate, and I think that this is a very positive and interesting way to see also the future. And I love or at least as I understand Dion's slide about the controlled, the unmanaged, and the optimal way. I would say that we have to get rid of the idea of having one and only enterprise social network for the large international organizations. This will never happen, because if you try to do that, you are firing against good and existing groups with their tools and try to replace what they are doing with your software. And it gets complicated, it gets frustrating, so we have to get rid of that idea of having one and only enterprise social network. That fits very good with the strategy of the large providers, because they lost interest in the commodity collaboration. Yeah? Microsoft talks about personal productivity or team productivity. And if you look at a slide with all the different products Microsoft offers in that area, it's a nightmare. So there is no one solution from Microsoft coming. IBM says, well, connections, don't know, we don't earn money with that. maybe we can blend it with cognitive. Let's do Watson and connections and build a cognitive solution. So they are already in other areas, yeah. And therefore, personally, I believe we need something else. And maybe the situation with HipChat or Slack is a good way to establish a kind of a social layer that helps us to integrate different solutions out there and create something like an ecosystem of collaboration solutions for large enterprises. Sorry for being too long.
Trudi.
Thank you.
TallyFox is a best of breed approach for organizing again the knowledge within those networks, as far as I understood it.
Actually,
I was right.
it's a little bit, but our strategy is actually to build what's the holy grail. I would say optimum for whom, right? Is it the individual team, bottom up, or is it the top down? And I kind of see it as a VC. You know, I look at us being in the valley of disillusionment, where we started at the holy grail. You know, this is typical. We say, okay, we overestimate the impact of technology in the short term, and we underestimate it in the long term. So what we did, from my perspective, is we focused at the corporate IT side and rolled out these intranets and social business, things that haven't delivered. So then we are kind of digesting that and saying, okay, so the guys who really need to work, the individual teams, it's optimum for them because they're the guys who are actually going to log in and need to use it every day. That's great. But I see us where we are now is to say, you know, unless you're a small company or a small team that's on a project that stops or you never grow, this doesn't scale. So we're in this mess. I love your chart too, but it's a question of, from a technology perspective, from an architectural perspective, this isn't just an open API question. This is proprietary versus non-proprietary, and this is about, if you ask me, the social structure, you know, you start with basic things, like a profile page, like tagging, like metadata. There's no standards in this market, you know? So if you take, and in some of the cases, some of these solutions don't even have vocabularies or taxonomies or ontologies. So we have a lot of things to digest to move from, my perspective, what's a great team communication solution, a la Slack or others, to what we started with, which was seeing the ultimate, what we're trying to do. And if you look at McKinsey's everybody's latest survey, what are these large networks, these knowledge networks trying to accomplish? They're trying to get access to expertise. That's what everyone's trying to do. But you know, you don't start there because there's no incentive for the people to go. So I see this as an evolution from the individual team or project workspaces to knit these things together into something that's a larger knowledge-sharing network. And that's what TallyFox tries to do.
Okay, that was a pitch at the end. Sorry. It's okay. Martin, how do you see the...
Okay, so...
what's your opinion about the market and the evolution of the market?
Personally, me and we as HIRSCHTEC look on each project from the intranet perspective, not only from a social networking perspective. So we try to implement these technologies coming from the intranet side. So how does a company wants to deliver information to the people? And sometimes companies decide for the classical way, classical intranets. And a lot of companies nowadays take the social networking way, so they try to implement a activity stream to deliver informations. But you can't deliver an activity stream without talking about even project rooms, communities and things. So we see a strong demand for those community work, project work. And so we seldom talk about social networking in itself. And in our definition, we have three big areas of softwares when we talk about that. We have the big ones like IBM Portal with IBM connections. I think you can't, in my opinion, you can't talk about connections without the whole IBM technology stack to build an intranet, for example. And SharePoint, of course, belongs in this area. Then we have a second area. This is the all-in-one solutions. You can build an intranet off, and you can build a social network, and differ between the architectural directions. And then we have the pure enterprise social networks. For example, like Jammer, or in Germany there's Just, which is very popular, which are very small, and they are very activity stream based. So these are the three areas, and we see a fourth one which focuses on the mobile side, so which is upcoming very fast in our customer situations. So and we see all these different situations. Some customers are afraid of having an activity stream, and some are very fast in adopting. And we have a case from last year, company with 700 people working in 3 countries, and they didn't have an intranet before, and they started with a small solution with an activity stream on the homepage, and they are very, very successful with it. So this is a very impressive example. Other companies starting from another perspective are very low in adopting, so we still see the whole kind of developments.
Okay, so that's interesting. So, you have those 4 clusters, so we heard about a lot of different approaches to this, and we're already, some of you mentioned already some approaches which could integrate this more. We heard from Dion, there is this open social approach. On the activity stream side, we've got this activity stream standard something, and then we have those tools now, like Slack, who are providing a platform for integration. So where do you see, especially in regards to what we talked this morning also on the panel already, that we need to have an agile approach for these initiatives, so that we have to approach, that we have to provide some kind of platforms to start with and then develop into new areas maybe to evolve the project at the end. Therefore we need some kind of scope to development. So maybe these integration parts become very important for this. So what are your thoughts about the future of this integration layer?
I think it's interesting. I agree very much with what you say, that the integration layer is not the most important, but it is the handshake between best-in-breed solutions for the way people collaborate. And I think that underlies the choice that people have to make. So for instance, if you talk about a social intranet, what do you have? You have a profile, you have content. Let's talk about Twitter. What do you have? A profile, content. Confluence, what do you have? Profile. It's all the same, right? The user experience of how you enter this content is extremely important. And I think you can think of this in 2 ways. I like to often say information archaeology, going back and actually discovering the information that was left behind by people who are no longer with the company or moved on to different departments. This is a fundamental difference in the way you would be looking for information. The metadata you would be using, the way that you would be interacting with it is completely different. A tool like HipChat or Slack, for instance, is not necessarily archaeology, it's culture change. It is fundamentally a way where you can walk into a room where people who have the knowledge you need right then and there can speak back to you. And I think the integrations that you find often are the ones where you find the best-in-breed solution for the aspect of what you're trying to do and have a wide conversation about the way that that needs to be bubbled up in visibility at the top layers and back down. So you have to come to a conclusion around what are the things that everyone would need to see and blow away everything else that does not make sense. I mean, for instance, if you have email notifications turned on any of these platforms, very quickly you go back to the world of email. That is the way that you are notified, right? And with tools like HipChat, Slack, you also have this integration point which removes email from the equation. If you need to be notified, just now I was HipChatted by someone, right? These kind of notifications fundamentally change the way that you interact with the company and the teams. Yes, you and I are gonna, yeah, go.
You disagree, Trudi?
I don't disagree. I have a different opinion or perspective. My context is coming from voicemail, okay? So, yeah, I mean, you know, we had voicemail, then we have email. Then the next thing that's going to... Right now, I'm just overwhelmed with all of the WhatsApp and the other messages and HipChat and other things, sorry. But I don't think that that's solving the problem. It's actually just presenting it to you in a different way that's also proprietary. And this is my concern because, you know, in history, in architecture terms, right? Nobody here is representing the open source or the, you know, LifeRay or the Drupal kind of community. Remember that? You know? But why is that kind of dead today? Because it's not, it doesn't move forward. There's no forward integration. They're not compatible between platforms. So my perspective is one of open source and forward compatibility of whatever platform you're using. And I don't see very many people who are actually really digging in on that.
Dion, you have been also involved in the definition of the open social standard. So what is the situation on this?
Yeah,
Who's implementing this? So we haven't heard about it anymore.
Right, exactly. So I was, I was a board member of the Open Social Foundation, which has since moved into the W3C, which is a good thing because that's the organization that sets the standards for the internet, and they actually have the juice to make some of that stick. So, but the premise was that there is no SMTP for social, right? That's why you can any email client can talk to any other email client or any other email server in the world, and that's why email is still around. It wasn't for that. It wasn't that for the incredible interoperability that you can use any platform, any email client, any email server, and they all work together, every single one of them. That's why we're still there. And the enterprise social network model kind of used the Facebook model, which is let's create our own island. And that's led directly to this, what we call the collaboration paradox, is that the more tools we have, the more isolated we seem to be. We're all in these little tiny islands, all with a few people. And we don't talk, it's hard to, I can't talk to you because you're not using my tool, right? You're not using my instance of that tool. So that's wrong, that's not going to help us collaborate, and this is where it's finally the industry's getting there. With Open Social was an intent to do that, and many of the Open Social supporting platforms still exist. You can do it, but I see very little interest in integrating tools on the end user standpoint. I see a few IT departments using Open Social. It never took on, and I think it's because you have to do too much work. If email made you do the integration with every single email server that you wanted to talk to, it wouldn't happen either. Somehow we have got to bake this into the firmament. And I love that your phrase, sir, about the ecosystems. We have to cultivate ecosystems of collaboration. There's no question that we're going to need a multi-layered collaboration strategy in virtually every organization, saying this is the stuff we're going to use for teams. These are the tools we're going to use for large projects and the whole organization and across to other organizations even, and have distinct plans, and we need that integration point. So we're all looking towards these new experiments to see how it's going to work.
So the future is on those new integration platforms like Slack, HipChat, and so on?
I think Slack is going to point the way, and I think everyone can use their discoveries around how to make all those everyone's APIs all work together, and they're discovering a successful model.
So, I'm sorry, I have to give you a direct no with one of our clients who tried to integrate actually 3 different applications, 2 of whom are sitting here and ours. The only problem they had was with the Slack API. They do not, it's on a call base, it's not direct memory call. You cannot do real-time integration with what they've delivered in their API. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, because we wanted to use it.
So, the Germans, okay, so you have to answer. No, Dion, you have to answer for it.
I want to tell you another experience in that all this data is owned by somebody, and all the guys want to make money with this data. So we developed a tool to access profile data on different sources, and we try to get a development API from LinkedIn, but they don't give it to us because it's not their interest to get us access to their data. And so this is the limitation. So it's not only a technical limitation, the API is available, but they don't let us use this API.
So now, Ziggy, also one adding question to you, certainly on top to what you wanted to say.
Okay.
If we talk about Slack, what you also proposed at the beginning, we're talking about an external service which is also operated in the US. Is this a solution for integration for German companies?
Of course not. It's just the first, at least the idea, and that's how I wanted to point Slack as the idea of that layer. But I guess there will other there have to be other realizations or products coming, and Slack is just, and I think it's so popular because it was the first one really pushing it into the market in that way. So, but there will be a different way and different products, especially for here. I wanted to ask a completely different form of integration, especially for the non-German guests here on the podium. Half a year ago or something like that, I thought that SAP Jam will be something with a huge impact on integration, because the story is quite compelling. Well, you do your ERP, you do everything with us, so come on, that kind of collaboration is always around a specific event or a specific business process, and hey guys, profiles, activity stream, etc., that's easy. Yeah, so let's do us the whole stack, and that's it. We did some projects in India, surprisingly enough, to migrate content from old version 1 enterprise social networks from the big providers to SAP. But if I try to talk to SAP guys here in Germany about SAP Jam, they are looking at me like, what are you talking about? So it's not so easy to really get an understanding of where is Jam positioned in the SAP ecosystem, and how you guys see that as a different form of integration. Yeah, so collaboration disappears in business process.
Trudi again.
No, I have just this past week 2 client examples that actually went the other way. And that's because business decisions, not technology decisions, really, that we already have so much invested and riding on SAP. Now we don't want to put another SAP legacy in our shop. So they actually made a conscious decision not to. And also because you said it's hard to get the information. So I'm hearing the same.
I think why Jam is not so successful in the SAP world has to do with SAP itself, not with the customer acceptance. So I was involved in the development of the first collaboration client in the early 2000 years at SAP, and it didn't work in the SAP world either. So, but what I'm a fan of is to stay in a technology stack, and I think this is a strength of IBM, and this is a strength of Microsoft, of course, because I see the biggest issues in the company. For example, on the employee side, if I produce a document in a collaborative environment and I have to store it, where do I have to store it? These are the questions I have to answer themselves every half an hour in the workday. So if I am only in a collaborative workspace, where do I store my compliant documents? If the way is too hard to get there to a DMS system or anything, the collaborative system will not work. So, and there I need those APIs or these integration scenarios, and this is, I think, where the big players have their strengths, and where some of the smaller players are not so successful. Yeah.
It's interesting, in the technological world, you have the fundamental difference between the user and the implementer. And when you say the word where you store a document, depending on who you ask, that is a completely different question. And specifically in Germany, that question has to do with geography. Yeah, you cannot let data leave the border. That is one of the concerns we have selling into the DACH region. I think the way that we have come across this is to platformize all of the kinds of products you could take from us. So if you want to use Confluence, if you want to use HipChat, you can put them inside of the German border using the server offerings. The way that people use the software is fundamentally different. And to your points around open standards, I will tell you, HipChat, for instance, did not intentionally choose not to use an open standard. There was not an open standard that justified the use case they were going for. And therein lies the problem. Cart before the horse, yeah? I think if you talk about the way that we do search in Atlassian, all of our search implementations are built on Apache Lucene. We use the open standards whenever possible. That being said, the only open standard that we could get that was enough that we could move it across everything was XML. We had to go back late 70s, early 80s, yeah? And that's the best we could do at the time. Now, that being said, if you try to import from a Microsoft Word document today, it will make you pull your hair out. It is one of the worst experiences when you're talking about moving content back and forth. So the middle ground is going to be somewhere in between, and I'm for one, am actually quite excited to see what that standard will be.
Yeah, so so we were talking about integration. So my point was, I'm not sure Slack has going to definitively prove out the path, but it shows that a path can be found. And there are other organizations, companies like App Fusions, which are specializing in nothing but collaborative integration, right? So we've got to find a path forward. In the meantime, I think organizations need to set clear rules for, how do you use a team, when do you use a team tool, when do you use an enterprise tool, do some integration with Open Social. It's supported in IBM Connections, in Jive, in many tools. I think even you guys, you guys support Open Social. So we can integrate and create, get rid of those islands. We can build the bridges between the islands, and we should at least experiment with them to learn more. So I'm excited about that, and I think it's about education and spreading the word, so please help.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience, so Winfried Faeser.
The question was already almost answered. I think the critical point for collaboration is the integration of collaboration in business processes to ensure really value creation through collaboration. And for example, with Slack and other things, I always look a bit critical at producing islands of collaboration. With IBM Connection, I had with some of the guys a discussion collaboration as a service, to see it not as a platform, but as a service integratable, collaboration integratable in all the other systems and services. What is the big picture for this collaboration business process integration? Could be collaboration as a service, be a paradigm where collaboration is integrated simply in the usual ERP business process. Because I thought SAP and Jam, I was very excited about it because I said, wow, that could be the story. Yeah? Not separated collaboration in ERP, but collaboration within an ERP, but perhaps collaboration as a service, integrated wherever you want and wherever you need collaboration, could overcome this island of isolation.
So
short, please,
okay.
Because we're already over time.
I would definitely agree on this scenario if it fits to the customer. So it's not a general solution, but if the ERP system is the basis of his daily work, and we as a consultant find out that this helps him most in his daily business, this is an absolutely valid thing, of course.
So, well, actually, I misread my own briefing, so we still have time. So, but anyway, I want to. Harald, do you have another question? Then I can also integrate you.
Well, thanks.
Your question.
Björn, I would add to that. If we take a look at existing business models, we are talking mainly about products, and for products we have systems which are lean and they support all those processes for producing products. If we take a look at new markets, when we talk about services, and I just talked to the providers of those enterprise social network tools, and they say enterprise social network is not a business tool in their mind, and that for me is quite interesting. If you put it in another way and taking a look at new businesses where we're talking about services, then communication and collaboration is basically manufacturing that service, and then it's absolutely business relevant. So that move from being just an add-on to do some collaboration to a new market where this is the essential part, this is the productive part of developing services, in my eyes.
One question, how is it done in Continental?
We're working on it.
That is everyone's answer, I think. I think it's interesting. When you talk about digital collaboration, this is the only time where you talk about collaboration being forced. Collaboration before used to be people speaking to each other. We are collaborating now. You were just integrated. Do you see how quick that was? You don't need a tool. There is no Twitter feed. None of that needs to happen, yes? This comes from how you do this at scale. And at scale is where I think the largest problem comes in, yes? I find it very interesting that an enterprise social collaboration tool says that they are not for business teams. That is insane. A social collaboration tool is a way that you collaborate outside of being able to speak just like this. That's for every team. That's for anybody you would ever need to speak to. And if a product team tries to tell you that they can make a product without a marketing team, without an IT budget, they are insane. And the only way that that works is if you speak to each other. You share that knowledge and you keep that knowledge for as long as humanly possible. Or digitally possible, whatever.
I'm going to take a completely different track here, which is about solutions and services in a context outside of IT. And I think of the commons, okay? And I'm very much personally disappointed that we seem to be moving towards the tragedy of the commons. Okay, what does that mean in context of what we're talking about here? The limited resource, if you're not familiar with it, have a look. This is quite interesting because we live in a world of limited resources. In this world, our limited resources are our domain experts, the people everyone's trying to get information from and to the clients from. So if we don't figure out a way, and if in the digital, in the tragedy of the commons context, this is a need for us to create in some way new social schemas, new social schemes. So this isn't about fixed teams. It's not about that team, this team. It's not about my top down. It's about really, and I think it's part of where we're stuck as well, is to have a vision of an organization that would create these new social schemes. And if I say the parallel to a corporation like yours would be avoid, please, the tragedy of your company common tragedy, you know, and this is very difficult. It's hugely exciting because I think when we really start getting to that point, this is about contextual computing. This is about identifying, you know, on the fly groups of people who can work on problems. This is about these challenges. There's a lot of things going on in this area that don't actually have to do anything with a digital workspace per se or social business. And so I'm very excited to see how these things are going to evolve to come together. It has nothing to do directly with...
Okay, as we're heading to the next session, I want to come to a final round of recommendations. So as we're having a lot of opinions here, we need time for that. So what are your opinions for people starting or... Yeah, we have to differentiate probably the recommendation on people who are starting initiatives and who wants to advance initiatives, what to do in terms of the technology. Okay. What kind of solutions and where to look at, for example.
Yes, of course, the search for the right solution is always a process, and it leads sometimes 1 or 2 months, and often we see at least nearly a year from first focus groups to a software decisions, and it has, of course, so many components. But what I would say is don't be afraid of an activity stream. So we see a lot of customer situations where activity streams are on the homepage of an intranet, a very successful instrument of communication. And have in mind that you have to make communication as easy as possible, and all processes belonging to communication processes, like storing files, like starting workflows, is like you should make it as easy as flowing water, that search the easiest way. And if email is the easiest way to communicate, people will stay at the email. So make the borders to start an activity stream or an activity in a stream as easy as possible. And the best way is to define situations, everyday situations for each role in your company, which helps to do the business better. So,
Trudi, what are your recommendations in regards to the technology approach?
Our approach is one, to identify your personas who are going to get the highest value so you have a fast result. And not just one group, I recommend 3 groups. Because if you mentioned that you had an example where one thing was really successful, was that because of the tool, or was that because of the corporate culture, or the team of the guy, or the community manager? All of those things can play a role. So I would say to anyone, your organization, please start to learn. Don't go off and spec a big, long, bespoke project, top down, but find the teams and the programs in your company who have the highest need, identify the personas inside of them to understand what's going to motivate them to get involved, and take 3 projects, get them up and running fast, and learn. Because once you turn those things on, and I would say even with different tools, don't pick one solution. You're going to learn so much in 3 months rather than writing a spec. That's our approach.
Well, work means collaboration. That's the basic thing. And if you're a starter, go to guys like Dion Hinchcliffe. He will be eager to help, and he has a lot of insights, so that's the best way. If you're not a starter, keep on going to events from Kongress Media, because there you meet all the guys that have a lot of experience. And that's the most important thing. Talk to us. Talk to all the experts here, and don't believe the Messiah, yeah, because there is no Messiah except your own people in your organization.
So we are not product providers, so I can't suggest the product right now. And I want to skip this commercial session. So I agree with you on the learning issue. So doing something is always better as doing nothing and sitting in the hole and waiting for better times. And so I guess in this social media area, you should accept that things will change very often, that some products will fade away, other products will come up. And it's not like a decision for SAP for the next 20 years. It's a decision for the momentarily best solution. And that's the way to approach, from my point of view.
Yeah, some good advice there. And I would say, don't reach for the technology too quickly. I see more efforts really focus relentlessly on picking a tool before they understand what their problem is. Collaboration is a human condition. It's a human issue. And what we have to do is find a way to determine what problem are we trying to solve. What's not working? And many clients do have a good understanding, saying, well, we can't get these two very geographically distributed groups to work together. Will this potentially solve that problem? And try and use the tool. And almost all of them have to be extensively customized for your issues. You need to be collaborating about your business. Somebody said you have to connect collaboration to business process to ensure value creation. That was a brilliant quote. That's exactly what you have to do. And if you're not using collaboration to actually conduct your business, then what are you doing, right? So designing that and then finding the right solution and then doing customization to bring it even further to what you're trying to accomplish. That's how you get that done. And don't stop all of a sudden when you have some initial success. You have to keep taking what you've learned and roll that back into what you're doing with that collaboration environment. And then you will have success. And don't forget, if you're doing social, you need a community management team. That's one of the top 2 critical success factors. The other one being having an executive sponsor who can actually give you the resources and funds that you need.
It all comes back to money. I must say, there is possibly, and I would say more than 1, maybe more than 10 people in this hall right now who were not born when floppy disks existed. Do not be afraid of the tool going away. We may not be saying wiki the next time you and I are all sitting in a room together. The tool may change drastically. Do not be afraid to experiment with the tool layer. And at the process layer, absolutely. You have to be willing to try something new, because who knows what the next big spurt in innovation or growth, where it might come from. May come from any of us, or not. Who knows?
So yesterday I started on our other conference, I started always an approach in summarizing this session with a hashtag. What is your hashtag for this session as a summary?
We actually use hashtags quite extensively in HipChat internally. I have gone meta with my hashtag. My hashtag is hashtag, the letters HASHTAG. Hashtag.
No, but for this session.
Oh, for this session. Oh, my apologies. What is the hashtag for this section?
So what is the key word you would say we have to take away as a hashtag?
Hashtag stop worrying about the tool.
Hashtag collaboration ecosystems.
Hashtag gather experience.
Hashtag experiment.
Okay.
Hashtag don't be afraid of inventing ad mentions.
Okay. Hashtag dive in.
Great. Thank you, Neal Riley, Dion Hinchcliffe, Jörg Allmann, Siegfried Lautenbacher, Trudi Schifter, and Martin Heers.